Hello, everyone, and welcome to Carla 2020. My name is Cynthia Lopez, and I'm the Executive Director at New York Women Film and Television. We're thrilled to be participating at Carla this year. The moderators of the Carla 2020 conference have come up with the value statement. And while I won't read the statement entirely as part of this panel, I did want to say that all of them believed, as well as we do, that we need to work together to ensure pay equity, diversity and inclusion, and safe work environments for all of the women who work in our industry. Over 3,000 women registered to participate in Carla 2020. So we'd like to congratulate the organizers, the planners, the coordinators of each of, and the moderators of each of the panels, as well as all of the panelists that are attending. I'm thrilled to be able to moderate this roundtable. It's called Television Makers, Showrunners, and Producers and Directors. We'll talk about how women create, run, produce, and direct in this ever-changing media landscape, including the challenges faced by COVID-19, the financial crisis, and the thriving Black Lives Matter movement, in addition to the current civil unrest globally. We'll see how it's done by the most successful television makers of our time, discussing what motivated their latest work, how did they pitch their first projects, how did they maintain cutting-edge writers' rooms and manage actors' creative thirst every day, while ensuring safety and city and state production guidelines. What does their own production schedule look like in the wake of the current health crisis? And finally, what are their plans shaping up for the new season? Our panel consists of Lesli Linka Glatter, a director of film, network, and premium cable drama with both pilots and episodes to her credit. Lesli's TV work includes Homeland, The Newsroom, The Walking Dead, Justified, Ray Donovan, Masters of Sex, True Blood, Mad Men, and Leftovers, Good Wife, and The West Wing, in addition to NYPD Blue and ER. So welcome, Lesli. How are you?
Hi, how are you? So happy and thrilled and honored to be here with you all.
Thank you. We're so excited. Our next guest and panelist is Natalie Chaidez, an executive producer and showrunner whose recent credits include the series Queen of the South. Natalie is currently writing and executive producing a series for ABC based on the novel Chicano, whose producers are Eva Longoria and Forrest Whitaker. She loves stories about transgressive women who push boundaries because, well, she's one of those herself. Welcome, Natalie. Natalie, can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead. Hi.
Great. Our next panelist is Rachel Feldman, an accomplished director and writer in television and film. The past season, Rachel directed multiple episodes of Blue Bloods, Criminal Minds, The Rookie, and the pilot and first season of The Baxters. She's in late development to direct Lily, her feature screenplay, writer of the Athena winner, of the Athena List and the Ravenel Grant, based on the life of the fair pay icon, Lily Ledbetter. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here with all of you.
Our next panelist is Robin Thede, a multi-talented comedic writer, performer, and producer known for her hilarious characters and social and political commentary. Robin is the creator, showrunner, executive producer, writer, and star of HBO's Emmy-nominated variety sketch series, A Black Lady Sketch Show. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I appreciate it. It's Thede, just FYI, just get that out of the way. But thank you. Good morning. It's early. Hey, no apologies Happy to be here.
Great. And our next and last panelist is Tanya Saracho, a playwright, television writer who serves as creator, showrunner, and executive producer of the acclaimed series Thede on Stars. Her television credits include How to Get Away with Murder, HBO's Looking, and Devious Maids. Welcome, Tanya.
Thank you for having us. This is going to be an exciting chat. I can already tell.
Absolutely. So let's just start right away. I guess one of the first questions, and I've said this to a couple of panelists, I've done a couple of things in my life, but I would love to grow up and be one of you. So I would like to, and I'm so honored just to have you all in the same space, even though it is sort of a virtual space. But let me start with, I was curious, as a little girl, maybe we can start with Tanya, who's up now. As a little girl, did you ever envision being, quote unquote, someone who worked in television behind the scenes? Is this something you wanted to do?
No, but looking back, I didn't know that this was a role. I grew up in Mexico, and I came here when I was 13. So, and there's still not the role of showrunner in Mexico. So we know there's head writers, but there's producer. It doesn't work the same. So I, of course, did not have a model. And I started this through acting. So I was always a storyteller that, my parents would put me on the table and I'd tell a joke or dance or do a story, which is sort of what I'm still doing in a way, but just not on the table, and not just me now. But in that way, in the storytelling way, yes, but not. I never seen this model, at the helm.
And Robin, tell us, when you were a little girl, what did you envision yourself doing in the future?
Oh, I had just always saw myself playing lots of different characters. So I'm a showrunner by necessity more than goal. I've showrun my all the shows I've created. In late night and in sketch, but I was always a writer through function as a way to perform things that I liked. And then what I realized is maybe 7 years into my comedy career that I really loved writing. And although I'd been doing it for that whole time, I always saw it as a means to an end, but then I started to fall in love with writing as a passion. And then that transitioned into helping other people launch their shows and being a head writer. And then that kind of just naturally led me on the progression to be a showrunner. And I never intended to showrun shows that I also star in and write, because it's a lot to do. But it's just kind of the way it's worked out for me. And I feel like really lucky because I'm able to have so much say in all the creative that I do. And I know that the best work I've done in my career are shows that I've also had some sort of producing role in. So I think it's important as a writer performer to be able to have a lot of not only creative control over what you're doing when you have a singular vision, but secondarily, and just as importantly, to also have a role in who you hire and the people that you bring on, and having say in that team from the top. And look, the buck stops with me literally in every way on all my shows. So I, live and die by the things that I believe in. And so it's only become more rewarding for me as a showrunner.
And Lesli, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I wanted to be an astronaut and a cowgirl. And I can tell you I've done neither of those things, but before I was a director, I was a modern dancer and a choreographer. So I spent 10 years overseas in Paris, London, and Tokyo, based out of Tokyo when the American government actually sponsored the arts. Yes, I know it's hard to imagine. I was choreograph and perform throughout the Far East. And in Japan, I was told a series of stories that I knew I had to pass on, and I knew it wasn't dance. So if I was not told those stories, I would have never directed. But once I directed, I knew it was the next chapter, because I love being a storyteller. And I've been fortunate enough the last maybe 12 years to, I love directing. I see myself primarily as a director, but I have also been an executive producer, what's called a producing director, or directing, I don't know, showrunner, whatever that is, for the last 10 to 12 years, most recently on the series Homeland. And that has been an incredible gift because I have been working with, it was all about, not about being the smartest person in the room, but about being in the room with the smartest people and having a no asshole policy, and about being able to grab the hand of the next generation and pull. Because when I came to Homeland, it was all the guys from 24 and they had never hired a woman. And
Wow.
my team was literally, it looked like a female crew because it was at least 50-50. And we shot all over the world. Every year we were in a different country with a different crew. So it's been a gift.
Great, thank you. Natalie, tell us a little bit about what
Let's see. I wanted to be the first female professional baseball player, and I spent many years fantasizing about that because I was a complete tomboy. And I, like Tanya, had not heard, I mean, I grew up in East Los Angeles. I had not heard anything about the film or TV business. Like, it wasn't anywhere on my radar until I went to film school. And even early in my career, I thought because I raised 2 kids in the business as a TV writer, show running seemed so demanding that even early on in my career, I couldn't imagine myself doing it. And then when my kids both left and went to college and stuff, I was just like, phew, just took off. It was like the weights had been lifted off my feet. So that's been my journey. It's been amazing.
Oh, Rachel, you want to tell us a little bit about your childhood dreams?
Yeah, I think this is such an important question, Cynthia, and I'm really glad that you're starting with this because I think we do need to empower girls all over the world. There are so many girls that grow up not knowing about all the things that they can do. I was a child who did know a little bit about the business because I had an uncle who was a screenwriter. So I knew that these things existed. And I had a very, very active imagination as a child, as we all did. And I could, turn crayons or perfume bottles into characters, and they were always talking, and, as well as my dolls. Sometimes I say that my dolls were my first cast because, playing with dolls was so important to me. And I was writing plays and acting. And then I was a child actor. So I was a professional child actor for a good 15 years of my early life. And it's interesting because even though I was on sets for my formative years, I'd never seen a woman director. And it wasn't until, so I drew a lot while I was a kid. I was drawing, I was acting. So there were the visual components, there were the storytelling components, and there was the performing components. Didn't understand that they could synthesize sort of into one thing until after I graduated from Sarah Lawrence College. I read an article in the New York Times about international women directors, Agnes Varda and Lena Wertmüller. And it was a whole article about European women directors. And I literally had an epiphany where, so I was already, 22 years old. It never occurred to me I could be a director, never. So I became a director.
It's fabulous. I have to say for myself, often people ask me, like, how did you get to where you are today? And my parents didn't let me watch television but 1 hour a day. So I always used to say, even when I became Commissioner of Media and Entertainment in New York, I used to say, I don't know how one becomes a commissioner when you weren't even allowed to watch television as a kid, but 1 hour a day. And I only thought, when you talk about careers for young girls, I grew up in the 60s and 70s where the only commissioner you knew was the fire commissioner or the police commissioner. I had no idea there was a media and entertainment or a film commissioner. So definitely for the girls out there, I all want them to know and understand the possibilities from showrunner to director to producer to commissioner in each of the city states that they're in and globally. The next question, so we have astronauts, baseball, we have so many different options that women wanted to get to, but we are thrilled, I have to say, that you chose in the end to do this. I wanted to ask, during COVID, this has been such a challenging time. Often I say, not only did we experience a pandemic, but we've experienced a financial crisis. And in addition to that, the civil unrest that has led to, quote unquote, a blossoming, if you will, of the Black Lives Matter movement. Can each of you describe how you've dealt with either one of these issues, COVID-19, financial crisis, or the Black Lives Matter movement, in your production schedules or in your creative process? I know this is a little bit of a tough question, but Tanya, can we start with you?
Yes, and I don't, because I delivered my show, I delivered the mix of the third season of Thede, which is now gone, canceled, the 12th of March, and the 13th I went in. So I just been in. And so it's been all like spiritual and esoteric. And then I was leaving a company and trying to find a new home while this was happening. Well, people didn't have money to give overalls, which I just got. So it was like a scary, dark time as I watched my friends deal with Zoom rooms and figure out when they're going to do production. So in a way, I didn't have to deal with that. I delivered like as the gate was closing, you know? Wow. So, and then the thing that did happen is that the weekend of the uprising in LA was when we were doing our series finale, and I didn't even dare to tweet or talk about it. It felt like it's sort of our show sort of went away because of what's happening. But there was no space for it. Like I feel like there was no space to talk about entertainment in a way, but I have not had to deal with some of the stuff that my fellow showrunners have had to deal with.
And you mentioned, just for clarification of our audience in the future, you mentioned this is the third and last season on Stars.
Yeah, in May we aired the third last season of Thede on Stars.
And then how can audience members see see Thede?
Amazon is a good way because you can add the around the world. It's like Amazon's a good way. There's also apps, Stars apps around the world. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Natalie, would you like to address how you've dealt with either one or all of these issues?
I actually have been doing a Zoom room, which isn't as bad as I thought.
A writer's room?
Yeah, doing a writer's room, which after you get past the initial, you're not sitting in the same room with each other, has not been as difficult as I found. There's technology, there's little Slack here and there. For me, I thought the most interesting thing that's happened to me during COVID and during this period is I got really in touch with some anger and passion that just has fueled my work. Like I sat down and I wrote like a crazy horror movie about a nanny, and just like, it got me in touch with something really great and something that has fueled my career. And I found that that's the way that I dealt with it, and everything that's going on is just like the weekend of the protest, I went out and protest and I just came home and just wrote. And just like, I just had to get it out, and maybe it'll go somewhere, maybe it won't. But it was just really a great experience in putting that emotion on paper, which is why we all do it. So that's been like a silver lining of, and also in my project Chicano, like people were much more open, which explores sort of the brown power movement. It's told multi-era. People were much more open to the protest and the political messages. They were like, where's all the protests? And it was just exciting to see that people wanted to hear that story, because those are stories I've been wanting to tell since I got in the business 30 years ago. And this was a moment that people were really receptive to it. And that was really cool and really exciting to experience that.
And just a little bit about how to do a writer's room via Zoom. Tell us a little bit about how you manage that weekly, or what's the schedule like?
The room that we're doing right now is managed through Disney Fox. So there's quite an extensive security system and various logins. And then there's a system inside of that, which is very much like what you're looking at now, where each writer is just in a different box. There's I think, proprietary system that Fox has or Disney that has sort of a digital board. So you're seeing the board on half the screen, and then you're seeing the writers sort of in a column on the right. So instead of in a physical room where you have an actual giant whiteboard, it's just sort of off to one side, which is a little challenging because you can't see the whole board at once. The hours, I think, are quite a bit shorter because I think people's ability to just tolerate a pitch and listen on a screen is kind of limited. So the time is a little bit shorter. We're only doing 4 hours a day, as opposed to many rooms will go like, I don't know, 8 or, whatever people do. But other than that, I think those are pretty much, there's no free lunch. They don't send free lunch to your house, which is a drag. But other than that, it's worked out pretty well.
Great. Lesli, the challenges of working during COVID, Black Lives Matter movement, and the financial crisis. How are you doing?
That is so much. I was on my way to Budapest to start prep on an 8-hour miniseries where I was going to be based there for 8 months. I was directing all 8 episodes. The writer Meredith Steen was writing all 8 episodes. And it's called The Banker's Wife for Amazon, about the banks that do business with dictators and money launderers and drug runners and our president and the wealthy entitled. I didn't say that. And that was March 12th. And got the call that evening to stand down. So the 4 suitcases and 3 boxes remained in the middle of my living room for about 2 weeks as I wandered around in my pajamas. And then I realized, no, I have to use this time. So it actually, on one level, has been highly creative in terms of new development, because I've actually had time to focus. And so I've set up a lot of exciting projects. So that's been good, but at least, and kind of focusing on what's essential in life, and then on the other side, at least once or twice a day, I am in despair. I am like, is this our new normal? Look at the social injustice in our country. I mean, where I'm just like, how can I proceed? And then it passes. So it feels like it's been this ride, and having to work through those low places and then go on. I have been on the Directors Guild of America COVID task force with Steven Soderbergh about finding safe practices to move forward in production. That has been amazing and not easy, but we published A Safe Way Forward, which is with IA, SAG, and IATSE. And then I've been doing I did the Sundance Directors Lab as an advisor, which I try to do every time I can. But we're all sitting in our rooms, so here, and had to find a different kind of intimacy. And then I mean, there's so many things in this, but I feel like for me as a middle-aged white woman, it's been a time to listen and try to understand more. So I can't imagine not being affected by what's going on in our country in terms of social injustice and this particular climate we're in, where we can't hear anyone else's opinion. It's an important time in America. I think we're in a turning point time, but I do believe we can get back. I think diverse stories are more important than ever. And, I'm trying to be an optimistic realist and look what's positive in this, and that we will find some way through.
Thank you so much, Lesli. Very inspiring, all of you. Robin, you want to tell us a little bit of how you've managed during this time? I so appreciate Leslie's comment of, every day, the ups and downs of every day is a realistic way to think about how emotionally we all have been dealing. Robin, tell us a little bit about how you've managed during this stressful time.
Sure. It's interesting. It's a different experience for Black people during this time, obviously, because we've spent our whole lives trying to tell people that Black Lives Matter, and there's an interesting phenomenon to hear people, agree finally. And I think that that's fantastic. You know, but for many of us, we've been screaming these things for decades, but in particular in recent history, since the death of Trayvon Martin, Black lives didn't seem to matter. I still question how much they matter to people, just being realistic. So this time has been hard because a lot of people call me for many things. A lot of people, I've been a resource, especially in the late night and sketch and variety world for a while, for people who want writers of color, particularly Black writers. And I'm happy to do that. But what's been happening now is I'm meeting a lot of new folks and folks who want to meet with me, despite how busy I am on other things, because they want to pick my brain about how to do better. And that's good. But I will say, in addition to all of the many other things I'm doing, it's a lot. So the stress for me is not about social injustice, because I've been living with that stress every day of my life. And about being Black in America and people not thinking that you matter. We live with that stress. And I'm glad in some ways that the world is waking up to that and realizing the stress of what that does generationally and just psychologically to Black people. But there's a lot of stress. You know, they say check on your Black friends, and that's because there's a lot being put on Black people to solve the problem, which is interesting because we didn't create it. But but the thing is that we're resilient, and for most of us, I think we want to be part of that solution. It's not just about demanding change and then not letting people in when they want to change. So for me, it's about supporting people who want to do better, to the best of my ability. But I will say it takes a large personal toll, like just being totally honest. But progress is not easy, and the time for progress is always now. So I don't like to look back and adjudicate people's past behaviors and stuff as much. Some people you have to, but you take that all in. But I think I'm trying personally to be forward looking and to be progress leaning. So in terms of COVID, we were 5 days from shooting. Our scripts are done because we have to obviously finish writing before we can pick up a camera, since I cannot be in 2 places at once, even though I have an amazing head writer. But we also block shoot. We don't shoot episodes. We just shoot sketches, and we shoot on location in LA. And then we formulate our episodes in post. So everything has to be written. Everything was written in February. We went through a month of prep. We were about to roll and got shut down, thank God, because the numbers in LA have since, as everyone knows, gone insane. They've started to go down a little bit, which I'm excited about. So now my last 5 months, in addition to writing movies and developing and all these other things I have going on and press for the show, we've been, finding that safe way back, like Lesli was talking about, using those papers from the various unions and negotiating with our network, who's also negotiating with the unions, to figure out how we do this safely and how we bring people back in a way that does not endanger anyone's health. Because at the end of the day, I love making my show. It is my happy place, but not to the detriment of killing people. So, at the end of the day, I think the good thing is, I think that we got a lot more eyes. And Tanya, I'm so sad to hear that that was your experience with Vida, because I do think it was a great show. And, it's a shame that people didn't flock to it in this time, because so many things found new audiences in this time. But I understand that not wanting to promote it. I mean, our sister show, Insecure, which is, we share, Issa Rae is an executive producer, they were promoting their show right when everything was kind of jumping off. And, they said, look, you don't have to watch our show. We don't want to shamelessly promote it, but it's here. And we feel like we can provide some stress relief. It's also Black joy. So that was kind of I think, helpful part of that. But I understand how, other shows could feel like it was inappropriate to promote. But I feel like for us, Black and brown, the struggle is very similar. And so, I think it's sad that your show didn't get the support it wanted. I just wanted to say that. But yeah, I think for us, it's, people say, like, how is your content going to change? And what are you going to do differently? And I'm like, well, our interstitial storyline was 4 women quarantining in a house at the end of the world. So we were already ahead of the curve in 2019. And that storyline will continue in season 2. And we also featured Black women living joyous, diverse, and 3-dimensional lives. So, I feel like I'm right in the pocket of what needs to be happening. I also have an all Black women writers room, all Black women cast, Black women director, Black women producers, Black women on my crew, Asian women running my department, brown people in all sorts of departments from all over the world. So I think we can just continue to be a light and beacon of how this can work. And now with 3 Emmy nominations and our first season for a show that aired a year ago, like we're proof that we're doing top quality television in all the ways that we're saying is possible. So I think that will hopefully, inspire people.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Rachel, tell us how you've been during this time.
So I mean, I feel first of all very grateful and lucky just to live in a beautiful place, and I have a backyard that I can run around in and get some fresh air. So I'm grateful for what I have, though I have to say on a financial level, it's been tough. I'm a director for hire and I make a living job to job. I don't have an overall. I'm not a showrunner of a show. I'm a worker who gets one job at a time, and there's no work and I don't know when there will be work. So, I've been on unemployment and the money gets worse and worse. So, for all of those people out there that are suffering, I'm suffering with you. It's a really tough time. I'm a bit of a Pollyanna, so I have to say my mood's been good. Again, I'm lucky. Everyone in my family is healthy and doing well. So I don't have personal issues that are bringing me down. And I'm finding this actually an amazingly productive time creatively. I'm doing a lot of writing. I'm mending my nets because I'm a director and a writer. I work as a director on a regular basis, but I'm hoping to be at the level that you people are as writers someday too. So I write pilots and features. Okay, not you, Lesli. But I've been in active development with a feature film for 8 years now that I'm finally feeling like we're very close to going with, and good things are happening. And I just have to maintain a very positive attitude about that as good things are happening. But I want to say sort of on the activism level, I come from grandparents that were working in the civil rights, who came from Russia, didn't even speak English, and were active in the civil rights and labor, years and years and years ago. And I came up in a progressive environment, always fighting for truth and justice. And, as Lesli knows, even through the Directors Guild for the last 30 years, the minute I became a member of the Directors Guild, I've been fighting for other women. And I have suffered from a tremendous amount of gender discrimination in my career over these 30 years. So I have fought for all women and have always made that very clear. So I think that this movement that we're in, where activism is in the consciousness again, like it was in the 60s, and it has been for me and so many of my sisters and brothers all along, this is a very important time, not only globally, not only in our culture, but in our industry, for real. Let's make some real changes. So I'm excited about what the future will be, because I think the group of us and all of the people standing with us shoulder to shoulder, we are not going to tolerate this crap anymore. And not just, one of the things that really is important to me, this is not just about racial inclusion or gender inclusion. We need to make our industry a kinder, gentler place where we relate to one another as human beings, and that we bring up people and we open doors and we have just a much more inclusive attitude about everything that we do creatively. So that's my little spiel.
Thank you, Rachel. One of the questions I had, and I did want to ask it sort of at the top, and I definitely want to get to it, is can each of you describe what you would consider your first pitch? Maybe we will start with Lesli. The first time you went into a room and you had to convince people that you had the creative strength to do something different.
My first pitch. Wow. Everyone's path is so different in becoming a storyteller. Nobody has the same journey. And as I mentioned, I came out of modern dance and choreography, which was incredibly female. So I never thought, oh, it's going to be weird to transfer and be a director. It never occurred to me. Of course, then I looked around and saw, especially at that time, there were so few of us. So it was not something I had in my consciousness when I began. And I had a very unusual beginning. And that is not to say it has not had many ups and downs and difficulties, but I was told this series of stories by my mentor in Japan. I knew I had to pass it on. I knew it wasn't dance. So that's the only reason I ever made a film. I didn't set out to be a filmmaker, but this is a 75-year-old Japanese man who became my mentor, who told me these stories. I'm a 25-year-old Caucasian woman, but those stories so landed with me, and I carried them around for a few years. And I met a filmmaker, because if you lived in Japan as a Westerner, everyone got your phone number and called you up. So literally I was getting calls. Hi, I'm Joey, who's a friend of Vicky, who's a friend of Sarah. And they all slept on my floor. So I met an Australian filmmaker by the name of George Miller, who directed Road Warrior. And he had just finished Mad Max. It was the first place it was getting released was in Japan. And that's how he eventually told me, you got to make this a film. So I started on this journey. I made my first short film. It was everything I was told not to do if I wanted a job in Hollywood. It was 3/4 in Japanese with subtitles. It had flashbacks, narration. It was a period piece set in World War II. It had one Caucasian character in it. And I was told categorically not to make this. Oh, I should also tell you, I made it through the directing workshop for women at the American Film Institute. Yeah. And I was told not to apply there because it was set up for women in the business who hadn't directed. I was not in the business. I didn't know anyone in the business, but I somehow got in. And as a dancer, you can't cheat. I worked on all the women's films to learn how to do this craft. And I encourage everyone out there, whatever you come in with, you can gather the skills to tell your story. If you haven't worked with actors, you can go to an acting class. If you don't know lenses, pick up a camera. There's always a way to learn. So I told this story, and it got nominated for an Academy Award for short film. Shock of nature. But that opened the door. We all need the door opening. You have to have some kind of talent, a lot of tenacity and hard work, and a little bit of luck. And if you get that luck, you got to help the next person. You got to pay it forward. So that happened. And I ended up, Steven Spielberg called me up. I know it's nutty. I hung up on him. I thought it was a prank call. Thank God. And he was doing a show called Amazing Stories. And he was having all of his incredible friends like Scorsese and Clint Eastwood come. And he decided to help 3 new filmmakers. And I happened to be one of them. So my first pitch was kind of to him, and Amazing Stories became my film school. So I've ended up pitching hundreds of times and setting up series, but that was the first one, was to get that first job. But so that sounds easy. It has not been. That was the door opening. I was very fortunate.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know our moderators are saying we have 5 minutes before we have to go to full questions, which I can't even believe. We need 2 hours for a session like this, but I'd love to have one more person. Tanya, maybe could you tell us a little bit about what your first pitch or what your first opening of the door was and how you did it?
It's all been an accident. So that's why I'm like, I sold a play, and then I told somebody, we are the daughters of the witches you could not burn. Okay, we want that show. Okay, like I've never pitched. And they pitched that to me. They were like, you want to do a show about gentrification in East LA? Yes. So I am now that I'm in a studio, my new overalls in a studio, I'm like this because I have to go in there and pitch. So I don't know how I got here, y'all, because
You're meant to be there. You're meant to be there.
Exactly. So someone else, Rachel, do you want to give a very short
Sure.
your first pitch?
So, as directors, we pitch in a very different kind of way because we're pitching our skills to implement your show. And I will say that my first successful pitch was to Stephen Bochco, on Doogie Howser. I'd already been, you know, a director for 10 or 12 years and could not get a job. I made a lot of short films, you know, the same time Lesli was making these. I was actually up for Amazing Stories the same time she was. And yeah, we were in competition. And so I just couldn't find a job. I got married and I had my first baby, and I was in a mommy and me group when one of the other women said, you got to meet my dad. And I met her dad, who was a producer, who introduced me to Stephen Bochco. And I went into Stephen Bochco, and my way up as a director was I had been a storyboard artist and an assistant for other directors putting together their pre-production notebooks. So sort of my little piece of genius is that I'm super, super, super organized for pre-production. And so when I talked to Stephen about how I prepared other directors really, and how I prepare myself and how I do my director's notebook, his mind was blown, because I guess the directors that he was hiring in episodic television were old pros who, you know, all of this, now that I'm a director, you don't really need to prepare in exactly the same way, because so much of it is happening as a mental process in your head. But, you know, I could justify everything on paper. And he was just sort of blown away, and he called me a little Eisenstein, and he hired me, and that's how I got my first job.
Wow, thank you, Rachel. I know we're getting a lot of questions from our audience, so I definitely want to start asking some of these very quickly. And maybe instead of having each of you answer, maybe have one or two. But let me go to Natalie. How do you deal with creative blocks, is the question from our audience.
Ooh, I mean, I'm a lucky writer in that I love to write, and the only way to do it, I mean, I do have a network of writers that when I'm blocked, I'll call. So I have my little crew, and if I'm stuck on my best guy friend, I'll text him and I'll be like, hey, I got this plot problem. So part of it is a little bit of community, and just to have developed this community of writers where I'm like bouncing stuff off. And part of it is just TV just teaches you, you know, I've been a TV writer for like 28 years, like you just got to do it. So part of it is just like forcing yourself to sit down and like whatever comes out, it's cool. Like you'll fix it later and you'll rework it and your group of people will fix it. So a little bit of community, and then a little bit of just like the discipline just to just do it and trust yourself that it's going to be okay.
Robin, thank you. Robin, how about you answering that question? How do you deal with creative blocks?
Yeah, some people don't believe in writer's block, and I absolutely do. I've been told that it's in your head and that I'm ridiculous, but I don't believe that. I believe that you can absolutely get blocked. So I just want to validate that for people. For me, I think everything Natalie said exactly. And additionally, for me, I set timers. So I'll say, all right, for this next hour, just set a timer for an hour. It's a realistic amount of time. And then I'll say, you cannot get up, turn off your Wi-Fi, shut down your email. For this hour, you have to write. Even if you don't know what it is, just type. And so I will often, that'll trigger something, and I'll get in that kind of tunneling, kind of tunnel vision writing where you're just letting it flow out. So I'll just like, and then I'll tell myself you can have ice cream after this, which is also very helpful. I set little rewards for myself. So yeah, I think you just have to do it. Even if it's bad, like Natalie said, even if it's bad, as you're writing, you'll be like, I know what I'm writing is terrible, and that's okay. Like you just have to get it down, because when you read it again the next time, it'll spark the thing that's gonna work.
Absolutely. We have another question, which is, do you see yourself as a role model? Let's throw this over to Lesli.
Lesli, I see you as a role model.
Yes, she is. She's a big role model.
Oh my God, I don't see myself as a role model. I believe in just doing the work. You know, so if I stop and think about that, I will be paralyzed. If I just continue to do it, then I'm in the moment and in the process. And, you know, I think because when I started, I'm an ancient human, so there were so few women around that I realized, okay, I want to be part of the solution. And I was told not to do that because there was only room at the table for one of us. And I thought, you know what? I cannot live in that world. That is not an acceptable way of thinking. So I think you just have to follow your your heart in some way and have the possibility of dreaming. And I think if you see it, you can start to be it. And if you don't see it, it's harder. So I think all of us here are doing the work, and no cannot be an option. Like I literally feel like I put on blinders and went, nah, 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 nah. Every time I heard a guy say, we hired a woman once and it didn't work. No. And no one would ever say, we hired a white guy once and it didn't work. No more white men, we're done with it. So I think it was just, you know, continuing to fight the good fight, which everyone in here has continued to do. And I believe now community and community among women is really powerful.
Thank you so much, Lesli. Tanya is a Latina. You know, I have to say, I know I've told many people, have you been in touch with the, you know, Tanya for, you know, from a commencement opportunity to something else, because I just felt like there are not a lot of Latina women in your position. And so do you see yourself as a role model and responsible for some form of inspiration to young Latina girls?
Not as a role model, but responsible for opening doors, yes. Just like Robin, my whole writer's room is Latina the last season, Latina directors, female department heads, Hispanic female editors. It's that is my responsibility. I do accept it. And I know some of us in these positions are like, that's too much. And I totally respect that, you know, but I didn't see me. And it's just my responsibility to open the door. That's it. I don't know about role model. I don't know about, don't take advice from me. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. But
that's not true.
That's exactly, that's not true.
He did let me in the castle, and then it's my job to, like, you know, lift that gate and pass as many people through. That is real, because we're nowhere. If you look at the numbers, it's sad.
It's so bad. It's so bad. You're holding it down. I'm telling you, you're holding it down. There's like 3 of y'all, and it's like it's so bad. It's so bad.
Well, I have to say, I was so pleased, Tanya, to be able to have you and Natalie both on this call. I was like, absolutely. Robin, tell us a little bit, you know, the same question. Do you see yourself as a role model?
Yeah, I do. I do. I know I am, because people tell me I am. So I'm the same way. Like, I was like, no, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. But I think in the last few years, like, I broke a lot of milestones. I broke through a lot of ceilings. I was the first Black woman to do this and this and this and this and this. And everything I freaking do is the first Black woman to do this and this. So I know for me, Whoopi Goldberg was my role model because I had never seen a Black woman playing characters. In Living Color was a role model for me because I had never seen a group of Black people, including Black women, play characters. You know, like that in their own world that they wrote and that they created and that they managed. And so for me, those people were role models, whether they wanted to be or not. So yes, I am one. I did not choose to be one, but I am one. I know, because I'm the only one doing it. And because of that, I don't take that lightly. And I have a ton of mentees, and I work with boards and, you know, do all of those things that are like structured role modeling. But on the other side of it, exactly what Tanya was just saying, we take on so much weight with having to hire the people that we're demanding other people to hire, that we end up being the role model for other showrunners and other shows and other people as well, to show that it can be done, because we can't just talk the talk, we have to walk the walk. And I think that, again, there's that added pressure and that added weight to do that. But there's also the joy of that. I cried the day that the Emmy nominations came out, knowing how many Black women can now put Emmy nominated in front of their name. Woo, sorry.
So great.
So, you know, for me, yes, I am a role model because of that position that I'm putting people in. Dime Davis is the first Black woman to ever be nominated as a director in Variety Sketch. And if she wins this year, she'll be the first Black woman to ever win a directing Emmy across any category. Any category in television. No Black woman has ever won an Emmy for directing. That is insane to me. That's insane. So am I a role model? Yes. Do I take it seriously? Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely.
Ooh, am I crying on a Sunday morning? Sorry.
Inspiring. Now we have one call. We only have a couple of minutes left. We have one question that is for Lesli. And the question is, Lesli, can you talk about a little bit more about social injustice, social injustice, and what do you recommend us as a global community to be doing as part of the industry? Big question.
A light question.
Wow. That is such a big question. I'm not sure. There's so much work to be done. I don't feel like I am in some ways qualified to really, I feel like we all have to listen to each other. We have to make substantive change. You know, I came from a family also of labor organizers, Women Garment Union, International Ladies Women Garment Union. So, but I feel like it's so much bigger than that. You know, we're in a time that I think with the killing of George Floyd and the things come into, this has been an ongoing issue that has not been addressed. I think it's the time in our history that it must be addressed for us to go on. And I think it's about finding the right groups of people to address this and not assuming that you know how to fix this. This is so much bigger. You know, I feel it's having the conversations. Is that a non-answer?
No, it isn't. It isn't.
I don't assume I know anything. I want to listen and then hopefully being with the groups of people that we can take action and implement substantive change, not just talk. And I think being silent is being part of the problem. So we have to speak out.
And honestly, that's all we're asking, is to listen and make the change, because we can't do it by ourselves. You know, and I've been on so many of these panels with so many, I mean, this group is just, the talent is overwhelming. The shine off of Cynthia's Emmys alone is blinding me. But you know, I'm never on these panels with white men. And I think that's really interesting. It's like we always get these amazing women and people of color together, but I'm never on a panel with white men, hearing them, you know, you're asking the questions that need to be asked, Cynthia, but I never hear them answering, you know, well, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Well,
Who are you hiring? How are you making change? You know, and so I think that we have to put those questions to them as well. And I know people are, but I'm just saying, like, just reminding, like, we can't make all the change because we're still facing discrimination at every level. All of us, all the women on here, no matter how accomplished we are facing discrimination at every level. So I think our white male partners have to step up in a big way.
Absolutely.
Well, I would just jump in and say two very simple things.
Sure.
I think the things that we can do is hire, open opportunities for everyone and anyone that you can, number one. And two, tell your stories, tell our stories, tell others' stories. Those are the two things we can do. Hire and tell stories.
Yep. And hire at every level. Don't think that every person of color needs to be trained, because there are plenty who are available at the executive level. Just want to add that. Thank you.
Lightning rod, and I'll start with Natalie because we have probably 4 minutes left. If there was one word that you wanted people to remember you and your work for, what would it be? I have to say, for me during COVID, I just kept on thinking when each of you have said yes. We came a calling, you said yes. You didn't say maybe, how come, when, why, you said yes. And I'm thrilled that you're all healthy and thriving. So for me, it's post-COVID and many things can happen in our lives. If we think of one word to describe how you'd like to be remembered, let's start with Natalie.
I like the word transgressive, so I'll stick with that one.
Great word. Lesli?
Tenacity, but with joy. 3 words.
Rachel?
Resilience.
Robin?
Mine's going to be so lame. I just want it to be funny.
Yeah.
Fun? Tanya?
Illuminating.
Oh, so good.
So good. For myself, powerful, not powerless. Because often they refer to people of color as we are always powerless. And I don't believe that. I've never believed that. And I do believe many of you come from organizing backgrounds. My family, my mother was a community organizer. And I think that it's really important to understand globally and the women in the industry, the power we do have when we work together. Any last comments? We have 3 minutes, so let's use them. Any last comments, things we have not addressed that you would like to say to this global audience? Lesli.
My favorite quote about directing, but it's also bigger than that, is Truffaut. And he said, the idea of good directing is knowing exactly what you want, but having no ego about giving it up the second anyone has a better idea.
Amen.
So the team sport of what we are in.
Great. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for being here today and for participating. To learn more about NYWIFT, go to nywif.org. To learn more about Carla, the Carla Conference 2020, please go to the Summit website. Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, Cynthia.
Bye-bye.